Hello and welcome. I am Ladi Akiridoluale. Tonight, EFCC recovers over 500 billion naira in assets in 2017, says late release of budgetary allocations to the agency is hampering its operations. Former spokesman of the PDP, Olisa Metuh, gets 1 month relief as court adjourns his money laundering trial after he appeared in court on a stretcher. Industrial action by non-academic staff of universities takes toll on the institutions as unions plan demonstration at the National Assembly tomorrow. And protesters hit the streets in South Africa as pressure mounts on President Jacob Zuma to resign.
Business news tonight. Shell Nigeria says production of Bunga crude oil is increasing steadily after brief shutdown.
On sports news, IOC President Thomas Bach praises North and South Korea for harnessing Olympic spirit as both countries prepare for the 2018 Winter Olympic Games.
And from Abuja, Lassa fever claims 1 life in Cross River State as Minister of Health calls an emergency meeting of all commissioners of health in Abuja over spread.
We begin tonight from the House of Representatives, where the acting chairman of the EFCC, Mr. Ibrahim Magu, gave an account of his agency's activities in the year 2017 and also defended its 2018 budget. But it appears the year 2017 was a busy one for the EFCC, as Mr. Magu told the lawmakers that the agency's asset recovery efforts yielded more than 500 billion naira in different currencies. He also identifies the challenge of late and insufficient release of appropriated funds has been responsible for the inability of the agency to implement the capital component of its yearly budget. Our correspondent, Larry Lasisi, has that report.
In compliance with Recommendation 29 of
the acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and officials of the commission at a meeting with the House of Representatives Committee on Financial Crimes. The officials are here to defend the 2018 budget proposal of the agency. The acting chairman starts with the performance of the 2017 budget and its asset recovery efforts.
This includes the final forfeiture of 32 billion naira and 5 million USD to the coffers of the federal government, recovered from the former Minister of Petroleum Resources, recovery and final forfeiture of 449 million discovered at the Lezico Plaza in Victoria Island, Lagos.
He also includes funds recovered from petroleum marketers, from the Nigerian Ports Authority, and subsidy fraud.
The total recovery made by the Commission for the period January to December 2017 are about 473.06 billion. The USD is 98 million US dollars. The Great Britain is 294. The European is 7.24 million. Dirham is 443,000 dirham. And South African rand, this is an estimate.
According to the acting chairman, one of the major challenges of the agency is that of late and insufficient release of appropriated funds, a situation he hopes will not affect the 2018 budget of 21.69 billion naira. The committee also considered the budget of the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, which has recently been given self-accounting status. Meanwhile, the Minister of Communication was before the House Committee on Information Technology to defend his ministry's 2018 budget of 6.9 billion naira. The consideration is expected to continue next week. Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the trial of the former National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Olisa Metuh, for alleged fraud continued at the Federal High Court in Abuja today. Unlike previous appearances where Mr. Metuh walked into the court on his feet, this time he appeared on a stretcher to prove to the court that indeed he needed urgent medical attention. Earlier, the trial judge, Justice Okon Abang, had threatened to revoke his bail conditions if he failed to appear before the court in person. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafo, reports.
On the 25th of January 2018, Justice Okon Abang rejected an application for bail filed by the former National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Olisa Metuh, on the ground that the medical report presented by Mr. Metuh was not cogent enough to warrant an adjournment. The judge also went further to order that should Mr. Metuh fail to appear in court at the next adjourned date, the court will revoke his bail and commit him to prison. At this proceedings, Mr. Metuh is in court, but in the most unusual way, on a stretcher. Lead counsel to Mr. Metuh, Mr. Onyeti Bazu, did not waste time in asking the court for an adjournment given the condition of his client. He informed the court that attempts to get Mr. Metuh's doctor to give a time frame for which his client will be released from hospital proved abortive. He, however, made a case for his client to be given a 1-month adjournment as he was hopeful that Mr. Metuh will be fit enough to continue with his trial within the period.
What we did essentially was to compel an obedience of that order, and that entailed Mr. Metuh, Chief Metuh himself, insisting on his discharge. And when the hospital authorities refused, he had to enter into an undertaking that he was being discharged at his own peril. We did all that in order to convince his lordship that nobody was playing any pranks, that he was genuinely ill.
This application was not opposed by the prosecutor.
As we also, the man really looks down. And as human beings and as mere mortals, I mean, seeing with my eyes what I saw, I couldn't have played God because all of us are liable to falling ill as human beings. So that explains why we could not oppose the application.
In his ruling, Justice Okon Abang said he has seen the former PDP spokesman in a state in which he cannot continue with the trial. And on account of the condition, I have seen him in the courtroom, he said. The judge held that even though the court of law must be firm in its decisions, it must be fair to parties, and when occasions demand, the court needs to be humane. Metuh was subsequently carried out of the courtroom and placed in an ambulance which brought him to court. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
Staying with court cases, the scheduled trial of a former minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Ms. Jumoke Akintoye, and 2 others over allegations of laundering the sum of 650 million naira did not commence today. Instead, the court listened to the preliminary objections of the second defendant, Senator Ayo Adeseun, who is asking the court to hands off the case. Following the objections of the EFCC to this application, Justice Muslim Hassan had deferred a ruling on the preliminary objection to the time for delivery of judgment on the case, paving way for the trial to commence in the case tomorrow, the 6th of February. Our judiciary correspondent, Shola Shoyele, has that report.
Following the arraignment of the former minister of the FCT, Jumoke Akintoye, and 2 others on the 16th of January, the court fixed the 5th of February for trial. The 3 defendants are facing a 24-count charge of conspiring with the former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Mrs. Dezani Alison Madueke, to allegedly launder the sum of 650 million naira. But an application by one of the defendants stalled the commencement of trial. In 2 preliminary objections filed before the court, the second defendant, Senator Ayo Adeseun, is challenging the jurisdiction of the court to hear the case. Through his lawyer, a former Attorney General of Oyo State, Michael Lano, the former senator contends that there was no service of the charge sheet on him or even a hearing notice on his counsel. This, he submits, is a condition precedent to arraignment, a condition so fundamental that its failure renders every other proceeding a nullity. In another preliminary application, Mr. Lano argues that the charge as couched does not fall within the purview of matters listed within the exclusive jurisdiction of the Federal High Court. The other defense lawyers agreed with his submissions, and collectively they asked the court to decline jurisdiction in the matter. The EFCC is, however, opposed to the applications. Through its lawyer, Rotimi Oyedepo, the Commission argues that the defendants were duly served and their presence in court was proof of their awareness of the charges. Mr. Oyedepo also submitted that even if the charge was defective as a result of improper service, the court could determine the issue at the time of giving judgment on the case. On the exclusive jurisdiction of the court, he stressed that the charges were money laundering allegations, which the court was well vested with powers to determine. In the end, he urged the court not to allow the applications delay the trial. After almost 3 hours of arguments, Justice Hassan held that the court will reserve its ruling on the issues till the time of judgment, as provided by Section 396, subsection 2 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015. Trial is expected to commence in the matter on Wednesday, the 6th of February, barring any other pending application. Shola Shoyele, Channels Television News.
To labor matters, there appears to be no end in sight to the ongoing strike by the Joint Action Committee of the Non-Academic Staff Union of Education and Associated Institutions, NASU, as well as the Academic Staff Union of Research Institutes, ASURI, as workers of both unions plan to take their protest to the National Assembly 2 months after the downed tools. The striking workers allege that the federal government has refused to address the issues of their welfare and the poor state of infrastructure in their institutions across the country. That was 3 months ago, and the workers are still counting, and that's because they do not know when the face-off with government will end. The workers have been expressing their grasp over the failure of government to heed to their demands, but more importantly, they are displeased about how some monies released to federal universities have been shared.
It is no news that no Nigerian university ranks among the best 1,000 in the world by all the rankings available. The latest ranking of universities globally puts the best university in the country at 1,099th in the world. If the running of schools is one of the yardsticks used, then the country may still have a long time to maintain that backward position with its perpetual close down of schools. The latest by the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, National Association of Academic Technologists, and the Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions.
The money they released about 23 billion. That 23 billion, more than 80% of it was allocated to ASU, that's our sister unions. And they gave other unions, that's the 3 unions that came together, 11%, you see, and that's even the genesis of it.
By that action, the striking workers are alleging that they are being underrated.
They portray it both in letters and in words that the non-teaching are not so relevant within the system.
Now offices are shut, the school environment untidy, and the students all lament the implication of this situation on them.
I would say it has been hectic for me because I do use the library most times to read. But now, so not using the library to read again is affecting me somehow, but I'm just trying to cope.
But then the situation seems to be different in the University of Lagos.
It's not really affecting us because there's light. When NASU is not on strike, they off the lights in the morning around 10. So students have to go for classes. But now that there is light throughout, so not all students will go for class.
The immediate solution the workers have is a roundtable discussion with the federal government.
We are always open to dialogue. We are always ready to listen to them. We are always ready to see to the fact that we have peace in the system.
While this face-off lasts, students and parents' expectations are that industrial actions in the nation's ivory tower don't completely bring tertiary education to its knees, making the demand for overseas study the preferred option.
In part 2 after the break, more on the industrial action by the non-academic staff of universities and research institutions. Plus, a former commissioner for information in Edo State and media aid to former military president General Ibrahim Babangida, Mr. Kazim Afegboa, is declared wanted by the police. Please stay with us.